I'm Nick Hughes, and this is Founders Live Conversations. Welcome to Founders Live Conversations. I am Nick Hughes. I am the founder and CEO of Founders Live, and here we just share and talk about inspiring and unique stories of entrepreneurship. And this segment of Founders Live Conversations is really a helpful, really an educational and helpful experience. And really excited to have Allison Byers from Scroobious, and she is the founder and CEO, and she's going to tell us and share with us a lot about her journey, as well as wrapping in lessons and tips around building your pitch deck, building your pitch video. That's all the things that they do. So Allison, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me, Nick. I'm excited to chat. And there's so many people here. It's awesome.
Yeah. And hey, we're only a few minutes in, and I'm sure more and more people will swing in here. And again, like I said with everyone, we have a chat box. Please use it. Say hi. Hey, if you want to share your contact information as well, anyone in here, feel free to do that. That's partly why we do this as well, in terms of a community. But Allison, what we'd like to do is, again, I think the first part is let's get to know you a little more. And what I think is great is the starting out with you, and then a bit of the story of how you really fell into or discovered these problems and how you are now solving them. So first of all, just say hi and let's get a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, sure. No, this is great. And so I think maybe I'll just start with what I was doing before Scroobious and then what caused me to found it and where we are today. And if we want to get into more of the backstory, I'm happy to go backwards too. But I founded Scroobious in January of last year. So we're very much a startup. It was 2 months before COVID hit, and I have 2 little kids at home. So that was a fun time to start a company. So we're about a year old. But before that, I co-ran a startup medical device company. And we were translating IP out of MIT in a hospital system here in the Boston area. And my role there, I was one of the primary people doing the fundraising for the company. Med device is a really capital intensive industry. It's very hard to fundraise for in general because we have to get FDA approval, run human clinical trials, all that kind of fun stuff that comes with med device. But we did end up raising almost $10 million, which was great. It was such a rough process, and I'm sure this is not news to anybody on this call, but it was my firsthand view of the inefficiencies that exist in the fundraising system. And then on top of that, the systemic barriers for anyone who doesn't pattern match, which is, really anyone who is not a white male, as they control the vast majority of check writing abilities today. So the biggest thing that stuck out to me in this process is the first step of fundraising is a pitch deck, which is a static document. You can't put anything about yourself in that. You can't put anything about a founder's characteristics. And when you're at the early stage, communicating your characteristics and giving a sense for who you are in your decision making and your command of your domain is rated in studies as just as important, if not more, than the actual business or technology itself. So you're starting this whole process with the wrong medium, this static deck, a PDF, which we are also, as humans, bad at reading and maintaining that information. We don't do well with static information. We're visual creatures and visual learners, and that's how we retain our information. So all of that is to say, a lot of underrepresented founders, or even if you're not, you send a deck and it's very easy for an investor to say no to that deck. And then you're blocked from ever getting a first meeting, and you're blocked from communicating those incredibly powerful characteristics about yourself. So when I would get meetings, I'm a strong presenter. I have a big personality. It would always lead to something, even if it was just more networking and building up the social capital that's required to get to the financial capital. But if you're blocked, you never even get there. And I just couldn't get past this. And so that last company, it was ultimately acquired in an asset sale. And I was just really hung up on this step in fundraising of why is that how it is happening today? And Again, we can get a little bit more into why I think that is in the fundraising later on in the chat, but you kind of you have these two, it's a two-sided network, right? You have founders who are innovating and you have funders who are funding innovation, and they have not yet looked at the process of how they connect with each other. It is underinvested, that in and of itself. And when you have what's happened in the world of fundraising, a very homogenous group on one side of things, of course it's uneven in who gets the funding. It's human nature. So what I'm doing with Scroobious now is I've developed this program. It's called the Pitch It Plan, or we call it the PIP. And it is a lot of online learning modules and downloadable templates for asynchronous viewing that takes my 20 years of pitching and coaching and fundraising experience and tries to kind of institutionalize it in a way that's very approachable and very efficient for founders to get to an investor-ready deck. What goes in a deck that investors want to see? How do you do the work behind it? And I help you get there in a very hands-on way. And then we film a pitch video to go along with it. High-level 5-minute pitch video meant to recreate that first meeting experience, a live presentation. So you get the detail of your slides and your narrative and your passion telling your story along with them. And then my founders get a link to that video to share for really more effective fundraising. Whether it's a cold introduction or a warm introduction, you're putting you back in that process. There's a human interaction at the first step. And you get to do things like what I'm doing right now, staring right in my camera, so you feel like I'm making eye contact with you, which is hugely important. There's a lot more that's going on at Scroobious, a lot more that we're going to build. It's a really big plan. This is not just a coaching service, but that's kind of, I've done a lot of talking, so that's the overview.
Yeah, this is great, and some background for everyone here, and I think it's just an awesome story. Allison, actually, she's from Boston, and she participated in pitched at Founders Live Boston in the fall. And my story is, the beauty of Founders Live, and because we're now on, we stream these and they're on YouTube. It was one of those days where I was like, I need to get outside, but like I wanted to watch or be a part of the Boston event. So I was actually on a walk and listening to the Founders Live Boston event, which is really cool. I think I would tell you that it's fun to actually just listen to some of these events sometimes rather than watching. And all of a sudden, Allison just starts going into her pitch, and I was just like, it was one of those where I stopped. I was just like, no way is this person, just your pitch was great. Your vision of really bringing such a better dynamic to creating not just like the presentation, but the connection and the human element of the pitch and the video and connecting to investors. And obviously there is a problem with underrepresented people. Just it's a problem. I mean, that's the fact, right? And so what your vision was, like, I was actually on a walk outside and I totally was like, I gotta, like, we gotta connect. And so that's the beauty of Founders Live, is we're able to connect with, I was experiencing exactly the best use case for the product and company that we built. I was just like, this is awesome. And I know that everyone is experiencing that when we hear the pitches. And so we reached out and we started talking, and now we've really being able to connect and really work on a partnership together, which is so cool. So that's a great story of just how we connected. It's a great story that your pitch landed not only with others watching, but me and Founders Live. So we're now here. But what I would like to ask is, how do you see this? And when you kind of said we got a lot going on, how do you see this actually really impacting the early stage pitch, investor, founder connection, conversation, introduction environment? Because there is a big problem here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the whole other side of what I'm building at Scroobious. So I've talked about kind of the founder side, because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people on this call who are, tuning in to hear about what goes into a pitch deck or an effective pitch. And founders do need some help getting there. And that's what this programming is for, is really to start at the beginning and help you get there, because it's hard to know. There's so much information out there. But the other side is investor facing. So we're also building an investor portal where these pitch videos can be shown to relevant investors who are looking to find more diverse founders to fund. And one of the big ways where I see this making an impact is a lot of people don't realize just how many angel investors there are. In the US alone, millions. And a lot of them are younger generations who are just starting to get into investing, or they're kind of the mid-generation. The funding power of those angels outweighs institutional funds. And I think there's so much emphasis in popular press on getting VC funding, which, we can talk about different paths, but there is such a long tail of angels who have different investment criteria. And at the very early stage, that's often what you need. You need someone who's going to connect with your mission, who's going to connect with you. You don't need an enormous check size to get to your next milestone. And in fact, underrepresented founders, women and minorities, are shown to do more with the dollars that they do get. And there is no way for you guys to know about each other, right? It's a matching problem. So I often relate it to an industry like online dating, where it wasn't that long ago that it was completely taboo. And if you met someone on the internet who wasn't in your network already, you were like, I don't know, that seems sketchy. It's now the number one way people meet their significant others, because it proved how inefficient it was to think that you already knew that perfect match for you. It's the same with investing in founders. There's no way you know your perfect investor already. You might know some great ones, but somewhere out there is somebody who is going to really care and have the check you need and get involved. And that's what early stage founders need. So I plan on collecting a whole lot of data about these videos, about how investors are engaging with the videos, and build some really powerful recommendation engines to help you guys find each other.
Love that vision. I really, really do. And hey, everyone, again, reminder, feel free to start putting together some questions, and we will do that. There is a recording of Allison's pitch. I will either, if we can get it into the comments here, it is on YouTube as Allison Bell, another Allison in here. She mentioned that. So yeah, I believe it was October. So it's Founders Live Boston in October of 2020, but we'll try to surface that video. Allison Byers, I would like to, I think a good angle here to take is, could you possibly, either walk through high level from your words, or even show, but I think it might be a good idea to kind of work through like what you suggest as like the group of slides that are best suited for an investor pitch deck. And I think the caveat here is, customization is important depending on your industry, your company, and what you're doing. But what would you say the slides that you recommend are the best, and maybe in what order?
Definitely. And so I can share my screen if you
Yeah.
do that.
There you go. You should be able to pop your screen up there.
All right. Let's see. Are you guys seeing the 10 section graphic here?
Perfect.
It's always hard to know. I feel like all the stuff with Zoom now and screen sharing, it's the new conference call phone problem. Like it used to be those phones, and now it's, can you see what I'm seeing?
Yep.
So so I have a published model that I recommend founders follow for how to organize your narrative and what to put in the deck. There is no authority on pitching. Anyone you talk to will have their own opinions or their own frameworks. Different groups that you're pitching to might request a certain framework. That's part of the problem for founders today, and for investors too, is there's no standardization. But I can tell you, I spent a really long time researching this framework. I did so many interviews with investors. It's not going to please everyone. It sure pleases a lot of the people that I know, and it tends to be effective. But you can mix and match these based on what makes sense for your company. This is just a general flow that I found works well. So I always start off a deck with, what is your mission, or what is your origin story? What ties you to what you're doing? And this is particularly powerful for early stage founders. If you're going for friends and family, pre-seed, seed round, the investors need to know why you decided to start a company. That's a big deal. And why you're going to stick with it when things get hard. Because the investors know it's going to get harder than you think it's going to get. And they have to have faith that you're tied to it in a personal and emotional way, that, or a very technical, proficiency way, that you're going to really see this through. So put in some pictures of yourself. Make it personal. That resonates. Again, we're talking about a human to human interaction. We all are humans, investors too, and we all feel these things, and that's powerful to start off with. Then I go into the problem. So here, I focus a lot in each of these sections on making it very relatable and very tangible. So when I talk about a problem, you don't want to make it some nebulous issue, and you don't want to make it something way larger than what you can actually solve as a company. So define what your problem is with numbers or statistics or research, if you can find them, and make it specific. What is the actual problem that you are solving? Because your next section up is, how do you solve that problem that you defined? You want to make it very clear how your solution addresses that problem, which is why you can't make a problem statement so huge that you couldn't address it, at least not right away, because we're talking early stage here, right? So I've identified for myself this first point of interaction, and I want to make it a human one with video instead of a pitch deck. I can't go out there and say, well, I'm going to solve the systemic injustices that happen in the fundraising system, right? I'm going to solve the gender gap. It's too big. It's too big. That's my, part of my mission behind what I'm doing, and it's where my heart is. But I can't say my company is solving that problem. So after you go through problem and solution, that's when I like to get into your business model. You have to show that you know who your customers are, how much they're going to pay you, even if it's a ballpark, and how they're paying you. You have to have thought through, how are you making money as a company? And so a lot of times I'll see founders define a problem or a solution by talking about the end user that uses their product, but that end user isn't the person paying you. So you have to define who is your customer and how do you make money. After that, I would do your market size. Market size is like the #1 thing that founders have problems with. And there's 2 ways to do a market size. There's a top down and a bottom up. A lot of founders start with top down, which is where you find some industry research and you say, my market is X billions of dollars, and if we get 1% market share, we're this. It can be helpful context to show how large an opportunity is, but again, it's not specific to your business, and investors don't do market sizing that way. So a bottom up looks at, it's a formula, and part of my program, I've built a bottom up market size calculator to help make this a little less scary, because everyone can do it. You take how many customers do you have in each segment that you're targeting, like all the customers that exist in that segment, times the average revenue you would get from that customer. That's your TAM. And you can have as many segments as you want, as long as they're mutually exclusive, so you're not double counting customers, and you add them up. And then it's specific to your pricing model, and it's specific to the actual opportunity, how many people you could sell to. That's very different than saying, like some market, I don't know, women's clothing is X billions and I'm going to get this percent. You're not selling to all of those people. So that's market size. And maybe after this, people tend to have a lot of questions. I'm just going to run through all 10 and then we can get back into it. Does that work?
Sounds good. Yeah, I like it.
Okay. So after you've defined your problem, your solution, how you're making money, who your customers are, how many of them are there, then I get into, okay, well, where do you fall in the competitive landscape? Where are those customers going right now? Or, where do you see yourself? And some of your competitors could just be status quo ways of doing things. It doesn't have to necessarily be another company. It could just be what are your customers going to right now, where you would fall into the options, and why would they pick you? And I strongly recommend doing a table where you have you in the first column, a handful of competitors, columns following, and then you define the rows of value. So you say, what are the primary value that you're providing to your end users? No, sorry, sometimes my camera gets blurry and I was not able to fix it before this call. It'll come back. And then you do checks and X's. So you get all checks and then you figure out what's appropriate for the others. But it's a really clear way to communicate to an investor, what are the reasons why somebody would pick your service over something else? And it makes much more sense, and it's much more glanceable than the 2x2s or a bubble chart. It really, again, makes it specific to you. After that, you got to include a why now. Why is now the time for your company? This could be macro issues. It could be something going on in the economy or the world. It could be particular to your business. You're all of a sudden on a huge growth trajectory, or you've got amazing traction and now you need investment, you've got to scale it. But what makes this the right time for what you're doing? After that, how are you going to market then? How are you going to reach those customers? And again, make it as specific as you can. So don't just say social media, or don't just say, we're going to do paid ads or something. How do you reach the customer segments you defined? Where are they? That's the point of go-to-market, is where your customers are and you have a plan for how you're going to reach them. And then the last two sections, team. You can either put team at the front or at the end. I tend to put it at the end because I like to get an investor hooked right away with my origin story and then the problem and solution. But if team is super strong for you, you can put it up there. You really want to emphasize, why do you have market fit? What makes your team super knowledgeable about the market you're going after or the tech that you're building? What draws you to it? And then a thank you. Always have a slide at the end. A lot of founders don't do this. Just have all your contact information on there. Just thank you, and every social handle, every way that they can reach you, so that it's on the slide. And then when you follow up with them and you send it, it's also all right there for whoever's looking at
it. Look at that. Look at that list. That is awesome. And, I guess a question would be, is that available, or where could people find that at your website, on your website, in the videos or whatnot?
Yep. It's on my website. It's in almost every talk I give. I broadcast this. Yeah, if you go to Scroobious.com, it's up there. I hope everyone uses this in a helpful way. I love helping founders, and I don't think there's a reason to make something like this a secret if it's useful.
Perfect. All right, we're gonna pull in some questions from the group, and the first one's Raj. So I want Raj, if you would like to unmute yourself and give a little bit more context to your question, and then the next person up will be Stephanie. So Raj, welcome to the conversation.
Allison, thank you so much. Nick, again, beautiful stuff like usual. Allison, I had the pleasure of also going on the Founders Live and watching all these amazing pitches. Allison, quick context. Well, I'm not white. I'm a brown kid from Texas. Yeah, I'm questionable, right? I'm a Middle Easterner from Texas, covered in tattoos. Matriculated, we kind of Seattle about a year and a half ago, starting a new company. Quant derivative trader, ran a hedge fund, about 2 billion, master's in quantitative mathematics, master's in econometrics. I walk in, I'm not a tech founder. I don't have a tech background, and I know finance, and I'm not good at checking boxes. I love the pitches, but I love working with Nick and Amelia on telling the story. And I think, honestly, like when we were talking with YC and Techstars, these boxes to check, I'm actually fighting it. I feel like it's diluting who I am as a person. It's diluting our brand, and it's just candidly disingenuous. With what I'm fighting on both sides, do I acquiesce and start checking some boxes?
So what do you mean by acquiesce and checking some boxes? What does that mean to you?
Hi. So on a live pitch, hi, I am Raja, the founder of X, Y, and Z, the problem we are serving. But we told a story, and I love the story dynamic of how it was being done. I'm finding there's a lot of friction points with having the story narrative. I also kind of go down some rabbit holes, so I totally understand having a more scripted pitch. It's just really outside of what I feel. And also, candidly, I feel like it's almost a filter and a match. If the C or the whoever it is more the angels, more like, no, man, let's talk. I feel more comfortable having that backing and whatnot in the projection and the theory, because we're not some sexy AI craziness. We're with people. We're working with users and experience. So it's more of that type of foundation and backing that I'm wondering how to navigate those waters, if that makes some sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I can tell you, for a lot of underrepresented founders, we tend to be drawn to fields where we have domain expertise and not necessarily the business background. So that's really common, where you come from a space, like your idea came from having really great knowledge in that area. And there's no reason that you can't be a great founder just because you don't have an MBA instead of all the work that you did before then. I mean, there's a lot of ways that I can go with your question, but first and foremost, absolutely never do anything that's inauthentic to who you are. That's not like, you want to be you. And right, I love the storytelling. You can tell I use humor all the time. I like being informal. I like being interactive. I don't want to be a stiff box either. Like, definitely don't turn into a robot. It doesn't have to be all scripted. I think there's a lot of romance around really legendary accelerators, or the kinds of names that you were listing. They're not the only options. And that's like saying I want to get into this med school and I just can't, they're only looking at a certain type of doctor. Like, the number of applications they get, they also have to put in some processes. I have opinions on who gets into those programs too, and what's accessible or what's not, right? For instance, like, I don't think moms can realistically be in those programs. It's never been an option for me. I couldn't do it. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I would recommend really going through the exercise that I put into building a pitch deck like this and putting structure around it is really meant to help you fully understand your own business plan, what you are asking for in terms of the investment, and where it's getting you. Because there's lots of options depending on what you're going for. You don't necessarily need Y Combinator. You don't need a big VC if you can calculate, the the capital you need to get to that next milestone. And there's so many other options. And that's where, angels or operator investors, or even finding other experts in your space who would understand what you're building because they come from that place and they're wealthy individuals. That's an angel investor, and they can write checks that are the same size as like micro funds. So yeah, that my best advice to every founder is be authentic to who you are. If you have to change who you are to gain an investment, that is not the right investor for you. And you have an investor for the duration of your company. I've had great investors. I've had investors who have become really big thorns. They're with you either way. So you definitely don't want to start that relationship off on a note that's not you.
This is great. And I want to, looking in the conversation, the comments, Bob had a question that's actually so similar. Bob mentioned in the chat if you don't feel that it was actually addressed, but basically those two were the same question, which is like, what Bob is saying is, is it appropriate to bring your personal story into the pitch, or is it all business? And what you're hearing from Allison, and I would just echo the same thing, which is, I believe that that's totally false. I believe that, what Allison just said is actually true, in the sense that be authentic to yourself. Your pitch and your description, your story is actually personal. If you're the founder, you created this company, you create it for a reason, and dang it, investors need to know that. And if they don't appreciate that, they're not probably they're not the right investor for you. That's it. End of story. So, you know, start building in that, I believe, your story, and then just be authentic to yourself and what feels right. Let's go with Stephanie. Go ahead and bring in, if you want to. Yeah, there you are.
Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for having this meeting today. It couldn't come in at a better time for me because I am pitching to a company that's called Zones Technology. They're the third largest digital mapping company behind Google Maps and Waze. So I'm super excited. What I'm building is smart AI. And I think you answered the majority of my questions just by showing your graphic. I tend to kind of over bog down my pitch deck because I started with 10 to 12 and now it's like 15. Now it's 20 because I'm trying to take the mind share of like my advising CTO and everybody. And I'm like, this is too much. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you were saying in your infographic, that competitor analysis and SWOT analysis can be solved within that matrix, that graphic matrix. Maybe it's similar in showing the comparables. And then would you still maybe or maybe not suggest putting in like a secret sauce, like what makes it special? But I guess that's kind of covered through Matrix. And I'm curious if any of you guys heard of the book Originals from Adam Grant and what your thoughts are behind pitching. Here's all the reasons why my startup or idea won't work, because then it lets the guard down of the investors and suddenly they're more collaborative and creating mind share in the pitch. Have you guys heard of that? Have you thought that might be a good idea? Those are my questions.
Okay, I'm gonna try and get to all of them. So I think for the first question about kind of how many slides should you have, there's different decks for different purposes. So what I work on is the first, your first pitch, and that's, you know, where I tend to focus, is meant to get you a first meeting. So this 10 slide format that I have, you tend to talk about 1 to 2 slides a minute. You can kind of calculate from there how many you need, depends on what's on the slide. But I go for a 5-minute pitch. And what my founders do is they send it out, they don't send their deck, and they say, if you have 5 minutes, please watch my pitch. If you think it might be a good fit, let's schedule a conversation. And then you have a chat. But if you're invited to pitch somewhere, or you're doing a live pitch where you probably have somewhere between 20 and 45 minutes, you want to spend about half your time on the pitch. So plan out, how long it takes you to talk through each slide, and make it half so that you have half for Q&A. So sometimes that's a 10-minute pitch, sometimes it's a 20-minute pitch, and you can add or remove slides as you need. So I recommend having this 10 as your core. Keep any slide you make as a backup slide. Don't delete them. Just hide them down there in an appendix in the backup, and you can move them in and out as it is warranted for the different pitches that you're giving. So that's step one. What was your second question? Oh, SWOT versus competitor, right? So SWOT is a pretty, that's a business school thing. It's meant to help you evaluate kind of your business idea, right? You're talking about your strengths and your weaknesses, like a lot of the stuff that we've gone over in the course of talking about the 10 sections. So it's not quite the same. It includes more information than just your competitive landscape. Sometimes you see SWOTs and pitch decks. I can tell you it's a little bit, it's almost like equivalent to a buzzword, kind of like, I was told I should do a SWOT, so here's my SWOT, right? But it's actually not as compelling as walking someone through the narrative that you're trying to tell, right? When you're putting together your pitch, you are controlling it. You get to tell them what you want them to hear in your narrative. So do that. That's why figuring out what section should logically follow another is, you get to tell, hey, investors listening to me, here's what I want you to take away from this slide. Here's my punchline. Start with it and then talk for as long as you need to just explain your punchline and then move on. But don't let someone else control what you want to say about your company. And then the third one, the idea of pointing out kind of risks or holes and making it more of a collaborative discussion. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I don't think it's right for your first conversation unless they directly ask you, what are your challenges or your obstacles? I would get into that stuff more second, third conversation. the first one, right, normal process is if you're sending your deck or if you're sending a video or if it's some, choose something else, the first point of contact is what the investor uses to decide, is this person worth a meeting? Is it worth my time to spend 45 minutes with them, right? All you need to do is convince them it's worth their time to meet with you so that you can have a discussion or some Q&A or get into it a little bit more. At the end of that first live interaction, remote also live, but in a live interaction, that's when they decide, do we want to get into due diligence? Should we go a little bit further? That's the point when maybe you ask for an NDA, you can get into some more of your details. No one's going to sign an NDA before that. So that's when you get into kind of more of the nitty gritty, when you know that they're actually seriously considering you.
Look at, yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. Great questions and great answers there from Allison. We have another question from Keon. So Keon, please, if you would like to step in here and give some context. This is around, being a non-technical co-founder, CEO, and, the dynamics of maybe not having a full tech team within your team. So yeah, Keon, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. I have two questions. Number one is, I have very long fashion background, 20 years, and now I'm building tech around it by outsourcing tech team. And then whenever I pitch my deck, a lot of feedbacks that I get will be, okay, it's a red flag. You don't have CTO as your co-founder. We don't invest in this company. So very typical feedback that I've been getting. My second question is regarding the competitive landscape. I have long-term, short-term goal and then long-term goal. Like business models are different from long-term and short-term. Mm-hmm. When I present the pitch, especially when I raise angel investment or Series A, should I focus on short-term or should I go further with the long-term, with the bigger vision? Because short-term is maybe the things that my website currently shows and how to sell more or how to scale up. Long-term goal might be scaling out instead of scaling up. So what's the best practice in this case?
Yeah, definitely. And that's so you've got two questions in there, both of which are really common, right? One, I think maybe the biggest challenge for non-technical founders of anything to do with starting a company is finding a technical co-founder or finding that CTO or that technical lead. This is an area where I always say, like, if someone can come up with an actual solution to this problem, they're going to have a hit of a company, because this is such a big problem. There are ways to solve for it. So it absolutely is much more challenging to fundraise if you don't have someone technical in-house. You can solve it. Like, so if you can very clearly describe how you are outsourcing the tech and why it is not mission critical that you have a tech person in-house to get to your next milestone, I would do that, right? So very clearly, this is how I have outsourced. This is why the tech works outsourced. I know I can manage it, and I don't need it in-house until I get to this point, and then I will hire for in-house. Or you can look at, there are agencies that do like fractional CTOs, right? Fractional is a big thing right now. There's fractional CFOs, CMOs. There's also fractional CTOs where for a fraction of the price and the time, you can have somebody who's kind of your trusted partner overseeing the outsourced dev. And sometimes they'll take equity in lieu of cash because they tend to work with startups. So that's kind of another avenue that you can go. In terms of the short-term versus long-term vision, I tend to put this in kind of the why now or the go-to-market as a timeline approach. So for the short term, usually founders are talking about their proof of concept when they talk about their short-term version versus their long-term. So you definitely want to communicate what's your big vision, right? Like we talked a little bit already. I have a big vision. I'm not even near building most of it right now, but that's my big vision. And I have to communicate it. That's what I want people to invest in me to get there, right? But short term, I am going to help as many founders as I can. I'm going to get all these videos in there. I've got milestones for what gets me to the long-term vision kind of mapped out over a period of years with funding too. And really what, your first step is your proof of concept. You're going to say, here's where I'm starting, and I got to prove that out. Prove out the business model, prove out that the customers are going to come to you, that you can grow that, and then how you're scaling after that to get to your vision.
Yes, thank Allison.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Such good thoughts on that, and I think I'll just add a little bit. I'll add a little bit for Keon that it is actually a very common problem, yes, and more importantly, there's two sides here. I think number one, if that's really the view of those investors, then again, the thought and the words of might not be the right investors for you. But on the other side, having a cohesive story of like Allison was saying, is how do you get there? And look, I think the other side of this coin, today's world, there's so many low code, no code concepts that we can build companies and products in what you would call MVP. And actually that's a great sign of an incredibly smart, witty, and ingenuitive actions as a founder to get what you can get done in this short period without having to what the other option is, to sit doing nothing and waiting for a CTO to fall in your lap. No, you actually figure out what you need to do to build today, and then have a plan to say, this is our first version. We've very creatively put it together with very low cost, and here's what we're going to do when we have a technical team or a CTO or whatever the case may be. So actually creating that story is pretty impressive, and I think most investors will say, okay, they're very cost effectively putting this together and getting traction, and also more importantly, not having 6 months, a year waiting to that CTO and then maybe spending $500,000 to $1 million in one way or another to get a product built that no one uses. You test on a very low level with the no code or the things that you can put together in a very low investment way. So those are some thoughts there. I think I know it's difficult, but those are some good thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think saying you're capital efficient, that's kind of the term that investors respond to, right? I'm doing this in a very capital efficient way. But really the questions around technical co-founders, it's all about risk reduction on the investor's part, right? All the questions they're asking you, they're trying to reduce the amount of risk that their investment will return money to them. So if you're building something that requires tech, it is a huge risk reducer to have somebody in the company who can build and understand that tech. And if that role isn't there, that's the behind the question. That's why when to get in front of it, you want to ease the risk, the fear of risk, by showing that you don't need that right now, and when you will need it.
All right, Pablo has a question. So Pablo, if you do want to jump up here and unmute yourself, but this is really back to the TAM, the addressable market concept, and especially in like early stage pre-seed, is that so important? Why would we need to, or should we involve that? But Pablo, welcome.
Yeah, first off, sorry if there's noise in the background. They're doing some like tree work right outside my house right now. So sorry if you guys hear some like loud noises. Nick, thank you so much for putting this together, by the way. And Allison, I also saw you present Founders Live last year. That was great. That was awesome. Yeah, my question, actually, it's something that I've been dealing with actually throughout my startup career, not just as a founder, but also as a early startup employee, which is usually when you're really trying to go after and trying to find that product market fit, I know that the exercise of doing a bottom-up analysis, thinking about market, not just top-down, is incredibly beneficial and can show investors that you understand your product and how it can affect people. But one of the things that I've always struggled with, and I wanted to get your thoughts on, is that oftentimes you do need to pick a segment, right? You have to. And that kind of pigeonholes your product a little bit, even when you're trying to understand what exactly is going to be your product. Like, what would you recommend to someone who's like maybe pre-seed, seed? I'm thinking about this myself right now. So I'm kind of like really coming up with an idea and really trying to morph it into a startup idea, that I don't necessarily know exactly who is the target audience. I don't have like, mothers between this age and this age, or like, something like that too specific.
Yeah, so I mean, I would try and define it as much as you can. A lot of what goes behind your market sizing and your financial projections and anything else you're doing when you're early stage, when you're pre-seed, is making assumptions and making your best guess. And that's part of why the founder, you yourself, are so important, because almost no company ends up where they started. And investors know that, right? And like everyone's going to pivot, everyone's going to figure out their product market fit along the way. But I think having at least a sense of who your customer segments are going to be is kind of key when you're pitching to an investor, because that's how you make money. And so you don't, right, if you don't know who's going to want your solution, who your customer segment is that would pay for it, when we talk about risk, that's a little riskier, right? Then how are you going to build to meet someone's needs if you don't know who the someone is? So you don't have to be as specific as, moms between these ages, but if it's mothers, okay, find some research. How many mothers are there in the location, that you're in the US, or if you're global? By the way, if you're global, multiply your US numbers by 3. Don't go like investigate every country. That's just a generally accepted rule of thumb. But you should have some sense. And then you have TAM and SAM and SOM, right? You have your total, your addressable, and your obtainable, and you're basically chopping it down as you get to levels of more specificity. You can choose how you chop those. So you can start real big and then get a little more specific as you're chopping your market sizes. And you can list out as many segments as you want to. Go through that mental exercise. And it's helpful for you, even if it's not in your pitch, to understand, to do the work of trying to segment and seeing for yourself, are there enough customers in these segments that I think I can go after? Or does one totally dwarf another one, and all my revenue should be, right, I should focus my efforts here first because it's such a big opportunity compared to what else I was thinking. So I know like maybe it's not a satisfactory answer, but there's definitely a way that you can put some guide rails around who you're putting in there.
No, that's helpful. Or even if one segment will pay more than another, right? That as well. Yeah. Exactly.
Because right, it's segment, you're taking how many people in a segment times the average revenue to you from the people in that segment. And you're exactly right. So one segment you might charge way more, it might be 10 times more, but fewer in it. And until you do the math and know how that shakes out, it's hard to know who your early adopters are going to be and who you should target.
No, that is very helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. We're getting really close to the end of the hour. This is flown by. Geez. So Allison, I think what I would like to do is give you a bit of the last word on, summary up here. Where can people find more? Again, we got the URL and the website on the chat as well. But let's summarize and share those thoughts real quick. And then as she's doing that, everyone, I'll be posting a couple of new things that are coming down the line. Everyone, Founders Live is on fire. It's crazy. And I will address after Allison's done. We've got some really cool stuff happening next week, which I'll be posting here, and then I'll talk about it. So yeah, Allison, share with us.
I will. And I've got a little special offer I put together, but I sent it only to Kate because she had DM'd me. So now I'm going to send it to everybody.
Yeah, go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Hold on, my two screen issue. Hold on.
So while Allison is doing that, I want to share with everyone, hey, you might have seen this, we're pushing it out, but we have a really, really amazing special conversation opportunity next week. It turns out it's going to be Wednesday, March 3rd in the evening time, Pacific time. It's going to start at 6 p.m. And we have an opportunity to talk with Ty Scroobious, who is not only the CEO of Friends at Work, which is a global talent management firm. She also manages John Legend. She's worked with him for like 15 years, roughly 12, 15 years. Her and John work on a number of different projects, and we are incredibly excited to talk with her. That is going to be an open conversation. Get on that list. We're going to talk about, creativity, entrepreneurship, entertainment, how she identified talent, and then the emerging of these. And oh my gosh, like, it's going to be so awesome. Ty is just, what I'm learning from her is just amazing. So that is 6 p.m. on Wednesday. That's the tickets right there to get that. So please keep that on your list as well. Allison, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with my two biggest tips that I tell every founder that I work with. One, test out your pitch on people that do not know anything about what you're doing, and preferably children or grandparents. Part of your goal in your pitch is to be able to have anyone understand it. Investors are generalists. They are not experts in your domain. Sometimes you'll find that in certain verticals, but for the most part, you won't. You are smarter and a better founder if you can explain what you do in the simplest of terms so that anybody can understand you. I will often have my 10-year-old tell me what he thinks I just said and check if it makes sense. And I'll do that with founders in my program. I'll have him read stuff they submit and say, tell me what this company does. And then I'll tell the founder what he thought. And it means you didn't get it down to the simplest term. Using acronyms, using fancy language, industry terms, investors are likely not going to stop you and ask what you mean or what that word means. And then they just won't ever know. And you won't make a connection. That's a huge piece of advice. My other piece of advice, for any slide that you make, think about it like real estate and how do you make the best use of it. Just stating problem, solution, traction is not a good use of space. It's not telling anyone anything. Use it, make a statement. I call it your so what statement. If someone took away one thing from this slide, what do you want it to be? What's the so what of this slide? Write it out. That's your header, not just a single word. And then you are walking somebody through the narrative that you want to tell in an easy to understand way. That's what I focus on, is clear communication, compelling communication with real meat behind what you're showing on the slide. You can have the prettiest looking thing in the world. If it's superficial and doesn't tell your narrative, you're not going anywhere.
Allison Byers, Scroobious, thank you so much. It's so cool. As I said, I mean, this is exactly the site, the service, the product that needs to come into the market. And so excited that you're doing that. And we're excited to have partnered with you and really just bring this to our founders around, especially the United States, and then hopefully soon around the world.
Oh, that's one thing we didn't even talk about, Nick, is that we're including Scroobious membership in the presenters package for founders to present at a Founders Live event. So you should present at a Founders Live event, and then you just get this too.
Yeah. So so every presenter we have a presenters package and we have winners package. And so we've now brought the Scroobious experience and, obviously the offer and everything that Allison and the team is offering. So if you pitch at Founders Live, you get a ton of things, and including in that is this opportunity with Scroobious. So thank you so much. This is so cool. And everyone, again, I've posted a couple things, the things that are coming down next week. Check out those talks. And then we also, next Thursday, so a week from today, actually it's going to be a 1 hour forward, but fundraising revolutionized by tokenization with Nicholas Weber. So take what you learned here, and then also we're then talking about now fundraising, looking at tokenization, blockchain, and the new things that are coming down the line available to founders and business owners. So check that out if you're interested as well. And hey, everyone, by the way, we are booked. I think we're booked solid until July on these every Thursday talks. We're literally booked out. It's crazy. So the lineup here is just amazing. So thank you all so much. I know we all got to get to the next meeting. All really good to see everyone in here. And Allison, thanks again. Such an awesome, just great information here.
Thanks for having me. This was lots of fun. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Founders Live Conversations. Everyone just have a great day and stay healthy, stay safe. All right. See you later.